from Nigeria, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the patron, Professor Sakia, the chief patron, and patron Professor Joseph, and also convener Dr. Khaled, and Professor Rajesh. I also want to express my sincere appreciation to Leuven and Dr. Patricia, and the coordinators are Dr. Sokwinda and Marichu, and all other academicians who are present in this presentation, in this conference. I will be talking about the multidisciplinary research in Africa, in Europe, Asia, and also Africa, but the focus will be from industrialization and globalization perspective. I am actually, I'm going to speak that, as we said, I have in general management, and I also specialize in that big data management. I'm also an expert in finance. I'm also an expert in software accounting systems, and so that's that. And we'll start by knowing what actually is this when we're talking about this multidisciplinary research. There is not any other research method that could be emphasized in this globalization like this multidisciplinary research. It is actually not just prophetic approach, but also a life to all form of development, even if it is accidentally assembled in our today's globalization. By implication, others put it as, see it as like North Carolina State University sees it as a disciplinary research. A multidisciplinary research is an investigation of a problem to test the hypothesis combining many approaches, fields, or academic method. And now from this one, you can see that when you're talking about multidisciplinary research, you're talking about where you bring in different disciplines and combine them together in searching for the truth of, to get a learning with the aim of achieving an objective from the different disciplines. Now, with this, you know that once you have a broader objective and you are bringing up different disciplines to ensure that you realize that objective, you are using multidisciplinary research. It can be determined by these ones here. You see a single discipline research, it has objective that is one, and then you see this different discipline, that one is singular. But when you come to multidisciplinary research, apart from the goal shared objective that you can see that has, there's an umbrella covering that's the second this thing. There's an umbrella that is covering all those monolithic shared knowledge. And when you come down to interdisciplinary, you see that it's a monolithic shared, but it's viewed from different angles. Like if you have a social science, if you are talking about social science, there are different disciplines that come together to make up social science. And then if they have one objective or goal to pursue, and it is that, then you say, okay, that's an interdisciplinary. The same to Convergent also use principles and combination of that to also do their own. But one peculiar thing about multidisciplinary research based on this diagram, that it has an objective to do. Having that in our mind, we will also see the trends in this in Asia, Europe, and Africa. Now, for instance, you can see that it is multidisciplinary research actually it has been in practice globally. It's not you see it being put to practice, and it's also becoming an increasingly prevalent against multidisciplinary research these days. Most from 2000 to date, most researchers always prefer, or most discourse around research is multidisciplinary, and then it's multidisciplinary research. When you come also, it is the hope of developing countries, and if countries want to develop, they must key into it. Order of it is that it is a topic of discourse and exploration among researchers, just like what we are doing now. It is also the thrust of research conference in recent times. Most recent times, as I said, you see them focusing on multidisciplinary research. You discover that, but it has some certain things that need to be viewed critically. Like, for instance, you're talking about the drawing of the objectives. Majority of this discourse are the objectives of multidisciplinary research, when you go through most of the papers, you discover that the objective is usually drawn narrowly, or it is narrow in scope. Then lack of coherent in sometimes you discover that most of the objectives are not clearly understood, and you see some gaps within those areas. And then you see lack of oversight or meaningful review and evaluation of the work. And sometimes some of those things that if you check them, they are not properly done. But then there are perspectives that we need to see. There are basically two. I group this perspective into two: industrialization perspective and globalization perspective. Now, when you are talking about this industrialization perspective, you are talking basically, it goes to do with improvement in terms of industries. When you talk about 17th centuries, where Britain was known because of industrialization, and technically you discover that they were using mechanization in terms of production, and major decisions within the globe and works, including research and academics, are tilted toward industrialization. And it also gives back to a lot of urbanization and all those things. Then when you talk about globalization, and this is, when you talk about globalization, on the other hand, is talking about how do you make the globe a village, whereby one thing that is done anywhere can be interpreted or viewed in every place. And this is championed by technology as more. Then you talk about, unlike the industrialization that was more of mechanization, this one is championed with more of technology. And you discover that it has, globalization has about some certain approaches to it. Like you look at the issue of, from transformation perspective, whereby the approach said it should be gradually, the change should be gradually improved. And you talk about skeptic perspective, where you are skeptical about the movement of the globalization. And then you have a hyper globalist perspective, whereby they believe that everything should be globalized, so that you see them happening in this thing. You see it as a community. Then you talk about constructive perspective, where you talk at you look at this the social angle of it. How do you represent your work, and how do you present your problem, or how do you present the objective, or what can you use? How do you present those things that you study in terms of language, what picture, and that's where the social construct comes in. Then if you look at all these things, they are all concepts that gives you globalization, and they are now. Not much has been done in this perspective, because 90% of or majority or most of decisions and even research approaches are now being mostly being viewed from the point of industrialization, and that is also noticeable in this area that we are seeing. And I have an example that I would actually want to portray this as we go on. But if you look at the discourse that are happening here, you see the effect of industrialization, decision thinking from industrialization, whereby from the previous speakers, we hear people talking about what is the base of civilization when we are talking about civilization. And then they're talking about Western civilization and other civilizations. And there was an argument that was coming up like that. Now, the reason was that most of people approach are actually from the point of view that because industrialization is usually, it reduces globe into sections. And so you see that component A might be more developed than component B, and then you see other components are not least developed. And so thinking and research work, and virtually the discourse of multidisciplinary research, are always kept within those spheres. They are not globalized in a sense that so it reduces the mindset of thinking of people to a unit, not complete this thing. And that's why you see this conference is very, very important, because it will open our eyes to see that, okay, now having known if you have idea of big data, you discover that you cannot just close up a community in a box now. Whatever happens in a developed nation goes down to developing nations and to remote areas with the presence of technology. And then everybody interpret this thing from his own point of view. And so if you craft a research question with an enclosure or specificity, you discover that you have a problem when it is being implemented globally. But most discourse now but thank God now for platform like this one that we are having, and then we are able to discuss these things, and we are bringing Globe as a community, and then we see those things generally. And then if you look at it again, you can see the nature of framing research questions, as I said, they are often narrow and creating problems. And as modern researchers, we need to widen and the advantage of technology to be able to do that. We have, and it has also come to stay. That's why you see a lot of communication, and even this conference that we are doing is also making emphasis to it too. And it should be something that, it's very, very key that we should do it. Now, I want to just use migration to elaborate this in terms of how this is used globally. Now, if you look at this diagram that's here, these are from the economic point of view, and if you look at Africa from this angle, you discover that their production is less than billion. They are in billions. If you look at Asia and America, majority of the colors there shows that their GDP is in trillion, which means that they have better movement, standard of living. But then the issue there again is that, but in their discussion and in their pursuit, in their research work, their effort, in their development effort, because you cannot divorce research from development. And in their development work, this thing, you discover that they took a part of industrialization, and you discover that you see, especially Africa, you see it looking below, majority of it is looking below trillion of GDP. But we have not seen any, and because of this singular you discover that migration from Africa to other parts of the world is high. And then a lot of people are dying. What would have happened if they were thinking from the Europe? What will happen to Africa? And then they think from that perspective, and certain steps are taken toward Africa and other places that has their development less than this thing. What would have happened? The story would have been a different thing altogether. For instance, the concept of putting in this research using technology and cutting all this part of the globe, at least it has given me, I'm here in Nigeria, in Africa, and I'm making presentation to the whole globe. And it makes me communicate from where am I. So there was no need for me to migrate or to live here to go to any part of the world to do something. You know, there was a trend that happened during COVID-19, where you see people moving from more industrialized areas to villages where there are fewer people to be able to make a living. That taught a very good lesson that actually, if globalization is turned into that context and research are done within those areas, we will reduce migration along the globe, and we also have a lot of stability in Africa. And then even the industrial development too can also come to Africa. And you can see the figures here. You see Africa, Nigeria is the biggest economy. You see it in billion. You come to Asia, you see it in trillions. You come to Europe, trillions. North America, you see them in trillions. You come to, so most of these things, the line was thinking right from 17th century up to date. Major thinking and focus are usually from this perspective of the interdisciplinary research or a unilateral research setting or other component, but multidisciplinary research is not given much this thing. So you begin to have such kind of this. And I'm using this because I'm just using migration as an example of other global topics that could have been considered from a multidisciplinary research perspective, and would have said this thing. And the other good thing that is there again is that these kind of researchers are those who set pace of development for any form of development. Because when you put on a lot of information there, policies are shaped to accommodate that, and reasonings are shaped to accommodate that. Now, for instance, the Africa, what we have there is only product, their product driven. Their economy is product driven, and you cannot acquire development, standard of living. You cannot stop migration with this kind of economy. Has to be, there should be a service or value chain attached to it. If not, you continue to have migration and people continue to die. That's why Mediterranean Sea has become a major debt trap in Africa. because of those kind of problems that we are having. So there is need for us to think from that perspective now, and it has become a problem now that the West is also challenged with this problem of migration. And then if you look at their approaches to the problem of migration, they are also still thinking yet from the perspective of whether to Corn of Africa, and then you see them building walls. But in conferences like this, by the time we put on a lot of information, why can't you develop the same thing within the same setting so that it will discourage migration, since major migration factors that are including the migration are economic in nature. And once the economy is stiffened, you discover that it gives back to a lot of crises and it becomes a problem. So for us researchers, we need to open our minds and overflow the environment with work that are global in nature, and so that we will improve our development. And by the time that we do this, most of our institutions, universities, and any other institution, they will be overflowed with those things, and from there, they will also give up or present a very good policies that are global in nature, and we will solve a lot of problems. Thank you so much, and I believe that by the time we pay more attention to multidisciplinary research, we will solve a lot of problems within the globe, and we'll have stability, and most of these crises that are happening could be solved. Thank you so much.